The study of the pharaohs. Secrets of presence. Of presence and vanishing. The clerics hoarded information in their sanctuaries and kept it from the general population. Did they do this purposefully? The subject of what befell the development of the old Egyptians, or the Pharaonic progress, actually inconveniences the personalities of specialists and masterminds, as how should such significance at the degree of people and stone vanish in such an irritating way, after the world loaded up with presents? Researchers have buckled down a ton and are as yet attempting to give reasons and legitimizations, and the remainder of those voices was a gathering of Russian researchers, who contended that the justification behind the finish of the old Egyptian civilization was a volcanic emission that prompted an adjustment of the worldwide environment, which caused a reduction in the water level in the Nile. As per researchers, sun-powered blasts brought about particles dispersed in the air, which mirrored the sun's beams on the world's air, which impacted the adjustment of the appropriation of intensity and precipitation all through the earth. And concerning the set of experiences books, we find that those blasts really happened in 44 BC, that is to say, during the rule of Sovereign Cleopatra. However, is this actually the genuine justification behind the termination of the Pharaonic development? Or is there one more secret job associated with the shortfall of the Pharaonic sciences, which was the principal justification behind the rise and ascent of that human advancement? About science in Pharaonic Egypt. Discussing science in Old Egypt needs volumes, not a couple of lines, and maybe a speedy examination of a few worldwide reference books, preeminent of which is the English Reference Book, provides us with a concise thought of the manifestations of the old Egyptian and his disclosures, going from paper, ink, beauty care products, toothbrushes and glue, up to imagination in designing, development, medication, stargazing, workmanship and writing. Maybe a brief glance at the incomparable pyramid, which as of not long ago researchers of humanity have been not able to unravel, shows us how the old Egyptians had the option to neutralize the laws of material science, which recommends that they had their own hypotheses of development, which stayed confidential of their progress not yet found. About the old Egyptians the scholar took the Maltese Thales, 585 BC. He probably took these advancements back to Greece, and until the start of the period of rot in the hour of the Ptolemies, Egypt was viewed as the breadbasket of the Roman realm. Concerning stargazing, the old Egyptian had a thrilling and superb story with the stars. There are even a few logical suppositions that say that the incomparable pyramid is only the observatory of the pharaohs to follow what is outside the globe, and that its plan was made at points from which to stay aware of the development of the stars. Space science at the otherworldly level was vital for the pharaohs. It laid out in them a direction that the place where there is Egypt is just an optimal impression of the place that is known for the divine beings and the great beyond. The old Egyptians succeeded in connecting the development of the stars with the planning of planting, stormy seasons, establishing dates, up to the hour of gather. At the degree of medication, the conspicuous truth stays that Hippocrates, nicknamed the dad of medication, was taken from the medication of the Pharaonic papyri, and Homer, the unbelievable Greek legendary writer, brought up in his popular book, Odessa, that individuals in Egypt are more capable in medication than others, and that their medication was better than different sciences. Concerning Herodotus, the dad of history, says in his works regarding the Egyptians, "They reasonably give medication, nobody was permitted to meddle other than whatever was doled out to him." The secret of preservation stays one of the mysteries stowed away from the eyes of the world in the East and West, and current sciences and developments have been not able to make sense of the capacity of these to keep the groups of their dead, which is associated with the possibility of eternality in the great beyond. And that implies that science was drastically connected to the strict framework in the existence of the antiquated Egyptian and his deals with earth, and his dreams of life in the other world. About the strict life in Old Egypt. Among the compositions of Herodotus, we likewise find an affirmation that the Egyptians were the most strict individuals, and consistently accepted that everything on the planet had a place with the divine beings, that they were the wellspring of great overall, and that the divine beings knew about the common longings of humanity, and they could mediate out of the blue they needed. It is laid out from the reference to the vast majority of the books left by the pharaohs, particularly the book, Exit to the Light, known by some unacceptable name, The Body of the Dead. That religion assumed a significant part in the existence of the old Egyptian man. There was no power controlling his life as religion controls. Religion was the old Egyptian's collaborator to comprehend the peculiarities encompassing him, and surprisingly, more so the strict skyline was a way of craving for advantage or wonder of the obscure and risks. Maybe the dad of psychiatry, Sigmund Freud, stimulated incredible debate when he said that the Egyptians, they created holiness, to which the Egyptian Sinbad and the extraordinary scholar Dr. Hussein Fawzi answered by saying that the Egyptians rediscovered the significance of religion for the human mind following 2,000 or 3,000 years of life a long way from civilization and nearer to savageness than to the example of human conjunction, which prompted the development of an imaginative civilization in the way of the old Egyptian civilization. Nonetheless, the possibility of religion among the pharaohs was not of a brought-together person, and the Egyptians disagreed on a solitary god or an independent symbol, and to that end we see a majority of divine beings. There is Ammonius and there is Aten, and between them handfuls and maybe many icons. Maybe perhaps of the best thing referenced in this setting is that the Egyptian pharaoh would have rather not turned to a cling to safeguard him, yet he needed to track down a symbol for himself, assuming that he considered him a harm himself. Over every one of the different unsettling influences that man has in his day-to-day existence, human instinct has provoked man to make icons for himself to whom he gave different structures. And when this religion arrived at the level of greatness and sacredness and entered into the spirits of the old Egyptians, it appears to be that the ministers of the sanctuaries it became important to intervene between the divine beings and individuals from individuals. And from here we start to discuss the middle person who laid his hands on the studies of the old Egyptians. Which could be the justification for the elimination of the Pharaonic development, isn't it spread? The ministers of the sanctuaries and the study of Thoth, the divine force of astuteness. Among numerous tales about the Pharaonic progress, its exceptionally far-off roots begun from Thoth, the divine force of intelligence, the one known to the adherents of the depressed civilization of Atlantis, who arrived on the mountains of Africa and from that point slithered over the Nile Valley and developed it, and afterward the human advancement of the pharaohs emerged. Notwithstanding, the portrayals are a certain something, and current realities about the ministers of the pharaohs and their part in Old Egypt are something else. They were the striking presentation of old Egyptian science, in spite of the fact that they took cover behind their strict customs, intercession among paradise and earth, between the venerated divine beings and human admirers. Be that as it may, one of the main errands appointed to the clerics of the Pharaonic sanctuaries was the conservation of strict texts and the information on the covered up, and the central peruser of the sanctuary was the legal administrator of the holy compositions and ceremonial texts. Egyptian ministers succeeded in many fields and different information all through old Egyptian times, as proven by the expression of one of the old in the late period of the well-known Athenian administrator and law specialist, Solon. "You individual Greeks are still kids, there are no seniors in Greece," Solon asked him. "What do you mean?" The Egyptian minister answered to him. "Your descendants are as yet youthful, on the grounds that you don't have the old customs and information that time has polluted." The ruler was the person who delegated the ministers, yet he left them with the errands of love, in the feeling of playing out the ceremonies important to play out the customs as per every icon in his sanctuary. Be that as it may, the secret side of his job, consistently connected with saving the convictions of the old Egyptians, and what contacted them from their progenitors. And it was normal for an agrarian group like the Egyptian nation would comply to every one of his principles, however. Keeping them with all their different basic minutes was just the consequence of the comprehension of those clerics in the realm of the Pharaonic ministry. Places of life. Sanctuaries with a level of logical colleges. In an exploration paper by the Egyptian classicist Mahmoud Mandrawi, we read about the connection among science and the clerics of the Pharaonic sanctuaries, and he stops long before the ministers of Heliopolis, who are viewed as the most learned ministers of Egypt. The ministers of the pharaohs were quick to know the division of the sun-based year, to sort out farming life, strict occasions, and they were directed to this division due to their consideration of the stars. Notwithstanding what Mandrawi calls consecrated science, his request is associated with the hunt in old works, the confidence in the force of the impact of sounds and the specialization remembered for hieroglyphic composition for strict use, and afterward the quest in this composition for various methods of articulation. Maybe the most recent examinations in Egyptology science let us know that Old Egypt knew multifunctional instructive organizations, and the review is given by the Luxor Community for Studies, Exchange and Improvement, and these establishments were known as the place of life, and they look like the college today. One of the assignments of the clerics, as well as leading there are the scourge of the pharaohs among truth and fiction. It is uncommon that one doesn't hear discussed the narrative of the scourge of the pharaohs, assuming notice happens to the old Egyptian, and the stories are various. Some of them are known and distributed, for example, the episode of the passing of Howard Carter, the pioneer of the burial place of Tutankhamun, who was killed by a mosquito nibble. There is a more renowned episode, on the off chance that one wishes to say more horrendous, which is the Titanic occurrence, and it is advanced that a mummy was put on it for transportation to the U.S. of America, after it caused progressive calamities in England, and set fires in more than one area or spot where it was put. Maybe the nearest thing to discuss the scourge of the pharaohs occurred in Egypt around 2 months prior, uninvolved of the exchange of regal mummies from the Egyptian gallery situated in Tahrir Square in Foco, Cairo, to the illustrious Mummies Historical Center in Fustat, and the ensuing series of train mishaps and flames. Some have connected them to changing the area of those mummies. Nonetheless, regardless of the refusal of the possibility of the scourge of the pharaohs, this doesn't refute that there is a wide area of secret around various old Egyptian papyri and texts, which express that demise would come upon each and every individual who upsets the resting pharaoh in the burial place, and these are cautioning texts that might be future. In this specific circumstance, the assertion of Dr. Khaled Saad, an Egyptian, the travel industry and archaeological master, who brought up that it isn't rejected that the old Egyptian knows about secret sciences like wizardry. It is laid out that the old Egyptian was exceptionally capable in various sciences, and there is discussion that he arrived at what we can now figuratively call harming the air, which is the technique that was continued in all entombment services that happened in old history, using the substance, arsenic, and with the conclusion of the graveyard lingered palpably for quite a while, and logical. The universes of sorcery and their crossing points with the study of the pharaohs. The principal man credited a ton of unfathomable or legitimized peculiarities to the concealed, and connected this to enchantment, particularly in the field of endlessly medication. The old Egyptian accepted that disease is shrewd spirits possessing the body, and that recuperating should be finished by removing them. The old Egyptian succeeded in the studies of speculative chemistry, which the English researcher Newton talked about specifically in Newfound Papers. For instance, the pharaohs knew the substance of Bing, utilized in sedation, and they were setting it up by pulverizing a marble stone and blending it in with vinegar, as teacher Mandrawi shows us in his past exploration alluded to. Then, in current times, substance sciences have demonstrated the activity of this sedative, as marble is a compound of calcium carbonate, which is impacted by acidic corrosive contained in vinegar and structures carbonic corrosive, so they were profiting from the impact of carbonic corrosive coming about because of the synthetic response during its rising to cause neighborhood sedation. It is difficult to say without a doubt whether the old Egyptians had an association with the universe of dark sorcery, and the association of the pharaohs with profound powers in the other world. The realities were blended in with legends north of a couple thousand years. In any case, it is sure that the pharaohs succeeded in what we can call white wizardry, that is to say, sorcery in light of logical establishments that nobody has had the option to find as of not long ago. For instance, the manner by which the stones of the incomparable pyramid were stuck without cement, and were those stones, some of which weigh 2 tons, released through complex actual cycles not known to current science. The demonstrated truth is that the walls of the sanctuaries of the pharaohs, including those that have made do as of recently, recorded on them the developments of the 20th 100 years, like air cushion vehicle, for instance, and the techniques for building the gigantic sanctuaries in Luxor show how the antiquated Egyptians had the option to saddle nature by mechanical means and strategies, physical and compound logical speculations to support religion, including the good book.